Hello to our audience and welcome to the MAPcast, where you can shine a spotlight on leaders in the B2B space who have invaluable experience and insights to share. Today, we're talking to Maria Cerecedo. She's the founder of Just Loop, and I'm going to let her talk to a little bit about her business, but welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul.
It's great to finally meet you. Can you share a little bit about your background, just to get us started here, a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today with Just Loop?
Yeah, of course. So I've had, I guess, a little bit of a different path within the fashion industry. So I started as a designer. So I started in fashion design, very traditional side of the industry, working in fashion shows, in runway, in studios. I was living in Paris at the time, so I did like very traditional like Paris Fashion Week kind of vibes. After that, I actually got hired for a collection in Mexico. I hadn't lived there in a long time, so I got hired for a collection in Mexico, and I went there to do like Mercedes Fashion Week and like the creative direction, and from there kind of like starting to like deal with the teams and the like factory side of things. I started to go more into like product development. After that, I went for my MBA, and that kind of led me into the business side. And I spent 6 years as the business manager for an R&D company for textile innovation. So that required a lot of relation with brands, but also with factories, with spinners. So let's say like through my career, I've really had a view of all of the different seats within the fashion industry, from the very beginning of the raw material to like the end consumer level. And that's kind of how that's really what inspired Just Loop and what inspired to create a solution provider for innovation within this industry, but being able to really work the entire scope and not only giving like a vision of one area, which is usually what happens with these projects. Like they get stopped because it's hard to communicate between parts.
Yeah, makes sense. So tell us a little bit about Just Loop itself. What is the concept of the business and how do you run it?
Yes. So we started as a consulting company in the beginning. It honestly kind of happened in a natural way because it was just a lot of people reaching out to me and to my partner for help in different projects in again always in relation to innovation and sustainability and supply chain. So like trying to figure out how to make a product happen, how to create a material, how to collaborate with the right partners. So it just started that way, and we just started to like get some projects more in like a freelance space, and then it was like, okay, well, why don't we just create a structure for it? And that kind of led to Just Loop. And actually last year we started developing our own software, because we realized that a lot of the issues that we were seeing on a day-to-day after working with brands for many years are always repeated in information getting lost in different email threads, in things that have not been followed from the beginning. Something that maybe people that are not very familiar with this industry, and especially with the back side of it, which is the supply chain, is that there's so many people involved in the creation of one product, and there's big teams on both sides. So that was like a big pain that we were seeing every single day, and that kind of inspired building our own technology and building software, and then also some AI solutions as well.
Okay. Now, do you follow the creation of a product all the way from the design through the supply chain all the way to the retailer?
So yeah, for most of the projects I do, it really depends on where the company needs us to come in. So many times we'll come in at the very beginning, meaning like raw material level. Maybe they have a fiber that they want to work with, and then they're trying to figure out how to turn that fiber into an actual product. And then we'll come in and basically collaborate with spinners, with knitters, making the fabric, making the actual material, and then making garments. But other times, like something that maybe it's in a different tier and it's more a manufacturing problem. So, for example, right now we're working with a company that it's in the health tech area, and we're really coming in from, okay, you have a prototype. Now that prototype needs to get manufactured at scale. And it's not the same to create one piece and to actually create something that can be repeated and that can be done in a very specific timing that fits the manufacturer, etc. So that's where we're coming in. So it's different for every client.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it. Now, am I mistaken in that the fashion industry and all the vendors, et cetera, that there's not a lot of software products that have been developed within the industry? Is what you're doing on the software side of your business, is that new?
Yeah, so there are some software solutions, but they are for the most part either built in a very generic way, like they haven't been built for the fashion industry, they've been built for supply chain. But our supply chain looks very different to most industries because we don't have repeatable SKUs that just kind of get, reorder over and over again. But like
Right.
every collection, you're creating something from scratch, you're creating something new. So that's one issue, and then another is that a lot of the tools are out there. They are internal to each company, so they're not necessarily collaborative between them, which means that like maybe the factory has an ERP for their internal processes and the brand has a PLM for their internal processes, but they still communicate over email and they still communicate over WhatsApp. So like that layer of information loss, delays, and everyday issues that we were seeing are really in two completely disconnected softwares.
Now, it just shifts and trends in the industry. Have there been any big shakeups in the industry that you've seen lately? What's kind of happening right now, and how do you foresee the industry moving forward in the future from a technology perspective?
I mean, I think a lot is happening in technology. I mean, of course, we have AI, obviously, as in any other industry, coming in strong, and brands are starting to become a little bit more comfortable with it. I would say like there's still a lot of things that need to be improved. We actually work with a few AI companies as well, and basically helping them do product market fit and like they bringing their solution and their product, like the outcome of their products,
Right.
to be aligned with what the industry really needs and how we work. Because a lot of it is still at the ideation stage, and it's not really something that you can replace a current process with. But I feel like there is, I mean, that's changing really fast. So I feel like there is going to be a very big, a very big difference, maybe like a year from now. And also how we optimize timing in production, how we can maybe cut waste, the way that we are planning out the productions, the way that we are tracking what's being bought versus what's getting sold. So
Mhm.
things like that I think are exciting. Then, of course, there is a lot of changes as well with legislation. We're seeing
From
more.
a textile perspective?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, more and more companies are preparing. It is something that has kind of been around for a long time, but like
Uh-huh.
we're seeing, like that kind of deadline getting closer of being able to prepare fully for a digital product passport. So being, having to trace the entire supply chain, having to know exactly where everything has been made and who you worked with, which materials are included there. So there is definitely a lot of push for technology to help,
Yep. Yeah.
because we need to trace every single step, and that's something that of course it looks very different when a brand has a product and it's trying to like trace back every single component of that product,
Mhm.
where you already started with something that is connected to a software and you can see the entire process, like, okay, this is the supplier for this thing, it was manufactured in this place, it had X amount of kilometers to get to this place, so it's where technology I think can serve us more.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like it's an industry that's maybe a step behind and catching up now. So there's a lot of action.
I think it's very different when you see like the front face, like
Uh-huh.
the consumer facing side of the industry, and then when you see the back, right? Because like there is a lot of innovation and a lot of let's say like flashy things always happening in like
Right.
consumer facing, but where we are really catching up, and I think this is where Just Loop is trying to be very disruptive and to work with companies on getting there faster, is on the supply chain side, on the like how we really create the products. Because of course you can still find today a lot of companies, like big companies that are doing productions for global brands that are still running everything on an Excel sheet or even on a manual level.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So what's kind of working well for you right now? What's been frustrating for you? There's two questions there, actually.
Okay, I'll say like the frustrating side of things is that, of course, there is a lot of resistance to change. We're talking about a side of the industry that is led by, people that have been around in that specific position, in that specific company for maybe 30, 40, 50
Right.
years. Many times it's family owned businesses, so it's been passed, generation after generation. And then you come in and like, if you don't have someone maybe like already internally that has a different vision and that wants to kind of push their parents and grandparents to do things differently, then you have to convince not only like, okay, let's do this, but actually like even convince them on the vision, on the fact that it's important, on the fact that there is other ways to do things, and you're not going to reinvent the wheel. So that's definitely something that we need to be very aware of, and that we need to build technology and build solutions in a way that fits their current processes and that makes it easier for them to adapt. But what's exciting, I think, is that we are having more and more options every day to do that. So I feel like I mean, we have so many possibilities today with technology that we didn't have even a year ago or 2 years ago. I feel like every day there is more accuracy in what AI can do. There is more speed in how fast we can build things, build software, right? By coding, even like software like traditional coding. Like everything is getting faster, everything is getting more efficient by the day. So that gives us a lot of possibilities of what we can create.
Yeah, AI's had massive impact. Every single customer I talk to is in the midst of figuring it out. It's either adding it to their solution set or figuring out how to use it for better outreach, et cetera. It's changed every business. I mean, obviously ours, and we exist because of it. But what metrics are you most focused on improving right now? Look at your whole business, kind of where you've struggled, where you've done well. What's kind of the one thing that you really want to improve on?
I would say that because our business is really divided in two sides, let's say. So we have Just Loop Studio, which is our advisory. And this is something that is really tailor made to each company. And we have different experts that can come in: textile engineer, production, product development, business and commercial development. So this is something that we don't really have like specific metrics in terms of the company, but more like each individual project. But I would say like the tech side of things, because it's something that is still very young and new, something that we are kind of learning every day and like adapting and changing things. I would say like one of our biggest focuses right now is on the actual like scalability, because one of the challenges that we have, and I think that any company working with software, with technology solutions for fashion brands is going to have this challenge, is that every brand is set up in such a different way. It's not something that you can very like easily categorize. So if you are doing X amount of revenue, or if you have this amount of customers or employees, then you're operate this way. Everyone is kind of different. So like you have brands that will have a production and then a product development team and then a sourcing team and a design. But then there's other brands that the design team also does product development, or the design team also does sourcing. So they're very, very different setups. And I feel like that's one of the things that we've had a challenge with, and that we've been focusing a lot of resources and energy on building something that can adapt to all of those variations in order to be able to scale.
Okay. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So if you look, say, 6, 12 months down the road, as you've sort of tackled these issues, where do you see the company a year from now?
Well, my hope, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, in entrepreneurship, you never really know.
Right.
you had asked me this 6 months ago or even a year ago, it was a completely different answer, a completely different story. But my hope is that we are able to onboard a good amount of brands in the US specifically, which is our main focus. I mean, we are working, of course, in Europe as well, but our main focus is in the US because we know that the fact that you are producing for the most part overseas, so like you might do some production in Latin America, which we do as well, but for the most part, the production is happening overseas. It's happening in a different time zone with different languages, culture, etc. So we really see that that's where we can also bring the most value in controlling all of that data for the relationship between brands and suppliers. So
Right.
our goal is to onboard, a good amount of brands in the US where we can have enough, let's say, like operations and traction happening on a day to day, so that we can then basically use that to continue to serve them, because we know that with that data and with everything that they exchange within their own space in the platform, we can help them actually benefit a lot of their teams in terms of, as I was saying before, measuring how much they buy versus how much they're actually selling, the potential reductions on dead stock, on items that get purchased that don't necessarily need to be, or how they optimize their productions, things like that. So right now we're really focusing on getting, of course, for brands to adopt the technology, but then also to get enough traction, not so much for the numbers, which of course it's always a focus, but like not so much for the numbers, but for the interactions to happen, so that they
Sure.
are on a day-to-day operating within the software, and that way we can use that information to give them even more tools and more solutions.
Yeah, yeah, and it sounds more intelligence too. It sounds like if you could aggregate all that information into an AI engine, you would be able to really have a vast view of the whole industry.
Yeah.
That would be valuable to sell. I would think. Um, but that's actually great information. I've enjoyed this conversation. We keep these rather short, but I do have one more question for you. If you could speak to your younger self, you're pretty young as it is, but if you could speak to yourself, say 5 years ago, what advice would you give you?
So many. No, but I think the biggest one, because I feel like I always was already an entrepreneur. I was raised this way. I mean,
Uh-huh.
both parents are entrepreneurs, everyone in my family. 5 years ago, I was in a corporate role that I enjoyed a lot, but I also knew that it was not my path for the future. And I would say, like, I guess like the main advice that I would give myself is just to make the jump, just to like go for it, because like you truly never know until you do it. And I've done other like smaller businesses before, but I had this like urge to start, and I feel like it's something that I don't regret the way I did it, because I learned so much as well. But I
Mhm.
think like you kind of just need that push of just do it. And of course, like, there's never gonna be perfect. Like, I know this quote that I don't remember right now who said it, but that if you're not ashamed of the first thing you put out, you didn't start early enough. And
Mhm.
like, a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, you're always kind of thinking like, I need to make this perfect in order to put it out there, or I need to be in the perfect position in the perfect moment to go and launch my business. And that's never gonna happen. So it's the same for many other things in life, right?
That's fabulous advice. If you're not ashamed of the first thing you put out, yeah, I love that. I love that. In fact, that's the first time I've heard that. I'll probably use that in the future. Thank you. This has been a really fascinating conversation. I hope that we're able to do it again sometime. I do thank you, Maria, so much for joining the podcast today. We're grateful to be able to share your insights. I hope you have a positive experience from it. And with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks for joining us, folks. We really appreciate your time, and we hope you learned something today.